Deanna, and today I want to have a discussion with you about the Industrial Revolution. During the Victorian era, things were handcrafted and handmade, but for the sake of driving up profits, they started to industrialize the making of items. And here's an example of the Industrial Revolution right here. Um, this particular China head doll was made in Germany, probably about 1860s, 1870s. She's unmarked. I believe she was made by Content Bone, maybe. And here, for example, she has her original cotton dress. Her legs are made out of cloth. Her hands are made out of china. She has early spoon-shaped hands. Unfortunately, she lost a few fingers here. And she's all hand-painted. And she has little curls that cascade and go down the side of her face. I believe her hairdo is what's known as a modified flat top. And so the Industrial Revolution was all over the world at the time. And for example, this doll was made by several different people. It was a cottage industry. And whole families, to earn money, would, especially ladies, would make each piece separately for each one of these dolls for the factories. So one family would be in charge of just making the arms. Another family would be making the shoulder heads that were made out of china or porcelain. Another family would make the bodies. Another family would sew all the dresses. Somebody was always making like each component for each doll, which were numerous at the time. And they made money by how many they made. It was quantity, all about quantity. But compared to today, this was still high quality, well made, and great craftsmanship. These poor people, most of them were very, very, poor. They didn't make that much money making each one of these components. And each piece could net them pennies. So they had to make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of each one of these components that made part of the doll in order just to make a living. I'm going to also show you her undergarments. They're original to her. Let me just try to pull down the lace so I could show you. As you can see, this is really well made, high quality. But at the time, it was mass produced. Not on a scale of today, where everything's pretty much made in China, but mass produced nonetheless. And it was a way for families to make money and keep a roof over their heads and to have money to eat. Workers back then were pretty much mistreated. They had no rights. They worked, they toiled away sometimes for 12, 14 hours a day with no breaks. They worked, a lot of them, 7 days a week just to make enough money to keep a roof over their heads. And children as young as 5 and 6 would sit there toiling away with their parents as well. A lot of kids, the parents were so poor they couldn't go to school because they needed to work. And the spirit of the family was very important back then. Children had to grow up early. So a lot of these dolls were made by children. Actually, they would sit there with their parents and work the 12, 14 hours, 7 days a week with their parents, making each part of this doll. If you think about it, it's almost slave labor. So what this doll represents is family to me. It is sacrifice. And another thing is the better quality dolls. It would take a whole week's salary sometimes to purchase one of these. So for Christmas, that was all what one little girl would get. It would be one doll. It would cost like $1 or $2 or $3, and that was like a week's salary to some people. So these dolls were well kept. The kids knew that if they broke it, that was all they were getting. So another thing that's of interest is that children couldn't play with their toys every single day. They would only be allowed a lot of times to play with their toys only one day a week, supervised. And that would be generally after church. And they would have supervised play, and they couldn't play with their toys all the time. So that's why a lot of these toys, 140, 150 years later, are still here. Because they learned respect at an early age for their belongings. Not like kids of today, where everything's disposable, and pretty much you break your toy, you get a new one. Back then it didn't work that way. So if a small child during the Victorian era broke one of their toys, it was a really, really big thing, because they never knew when they were going to get the next toy. There were inexpensive toys though at the time. They can go into a candy store and buy penny dolls, but they were usually very cheaply made little tiny little toys. But for the most part, these children really respected their belongings. So I hope you liked my video. Sorry if it was a little boring, but nonetheless, thanks for watching, and have a great day.